That's great. That's excellent, Kieran. Your strawberry plants look really vibrant and green and healthy there. You must have been,
I was going to cover them at the weekend with some fleece, but I'm glad I didn't now, because the weather, it's just got warmer, hasn't it? I thought we were going to get a frost, but that's one thing you got to look out for. Try and protect them from the frost. If you haven't got a fleece, put a good layer of straw down onto them.
good man, that's all good. So yeah, all good advice. We've got lots of questions for you, Kieran. Well, with one comment from Evie to say Nigella seeds are lovely on home baked flatbreads. So that's something I'm gonna try, Evie. She's also asking, what time of year is best to take cuttings?
Yeah, well, for the soft fruit that we've been looking at there, the gooseberries, the red currants, the raspberries, now's the best time, because they're just going into that dormant stage and they'll lose their leaves naturally. So you haven't got the worry of them, transpiration, which is the loss of water really, so we don't need to water them as much. But yeah, now's the best time. And then they're all ready for in the spring when they start coming to life. They're sending out those roots. So
Sure.
Now's a good time. Autumn's a great time for taking them.
Well, that kind of brings us neatly on to the next question from Jeanette. She's saying, when pruning, we cut back this year's growth. Is that right? And is it now that we prune?
Yeah, I do, because it stops all that wind rock that you get from the high winds over the winter. And that's a good time to do it. And that's another reason for taking the cuttings, so that you're not throwing all those cuttings away. You're making new plants. And if you don't want them yourself, give them away.
Yeah, so you're doing two jobs at once, really, Kieran, aren't you? But you're pruning your plant and getting the cuttings, and getting those for free. I have another question here. You're using rooting hormone powder there, and that's not absolutely necessary. Sure, it's not. I know you.
No. I just find I get a better result using it. You don't have to. I mean, I've heard of people using cinnamon, because cinnamon's a natural fungicide.
Really?
I've never tried it myself, but I have heard of people using it. But I find I started off at college using the hormone, so that's why I carried on using it, really.
Sure.
But there's no reason why you have to use it.
Sure. Okay. It's kind of belt and braces, isn't it? But
yes.
There's no need to kind of run out to the garden centre and buy rooting powder if you can't manage that. We also have a comment here from Nicola, and she's saying, I've heard of people using custard powder. That's a new one of me, but
I'll give it a go.
We'll all be Googling like mad tomorrow, won't we?
Just be careful it doesn't explode, the custard powder. I remember a big explosion once with very fine dust can be combustible.
Oh wow! Oh my goodness. Okay, they're all right. That sounds like another webinar. So Helen has she's commented that it's a great idea to save the seeds from your plants, because at the minute it's very topical in that there are lots of talk of issues getting seeds post-Brexit. So saving your own would prevent shortages. I think that is a thing. Come the 1st of January, they say it mightn't. It's not going to be that easy to order from UK companies potentially if you're in Northern Ireland. So something we just need to be mindful of, and probably even if you can, the price might go up. So
I've had a couple of orders cancelled already.
Really?
We placed orders for seeds, and they've said they're not going to be sending them to Northern Ireland now.
My goodness.
Because of the whole plant passport. It's going to cost them more. They're saying it's costing them more to send them over here than they're going to make. So that's one thing we're going to have to look out for in the future.
Yeah. And was that seed for post-January? You were?
Yes.
Yeah. So I suppose if you can buy whatever seed you need now, without going mad, because seed has a shelf life as well, doesn't it? You know, you can't, you just, it's no point in stockpiling what you don't need, but that's a wee bit scary. We have another question now from Kay. She's asking, how do I get cuttings of a fuchsia? I've tried in water and in soil, but nothing. This is a good one for you, Kieran, because you're from Donegal and it's full of fuchsias.
Yeah, I've had success both ways. My mother always put them in water until they started rooting, but I've just taken the semi-ripe cuttings really. It's maybe I'll do some next week video for you. I have a good video there I did some passiflora. So I mean, if she wants to join us again next week, and I'll take some cuttings of some fuchsia and show you them, or do it live even. But it is very simple, and it's worthwhile doing.
That'd be a great idea, absolutely. Then we can, I'm going to take a note of that for next week. Another question now from Rosemary. She's asking, can you take a cutting from a plum tree?
Plum tree, not so, they're sort of in the spring, not this time of year. But yeah, I mean, they tend to graft them a lot, but it's normally in the springtime that you would take cuttings from apple trees and plum trees and pear trees. But yeah, I mean, I'll try everything really. Give it a go. I mean, especially if you get a broken limb, you know, that's you're just going to throw it away. Try it, you know, put it in some nice good compost and a bit more grit than normal really for those.
Sure. Okay. Okay, we've lots of questions for you this evening, Kieran. We've got one here from Patricia. She's saying, is this the best time of year to do soft fruit cuttings? I think we've answered that with a yes. I have a gooseberry bush that is I'd like to take a cutting from. She's also saying that my gooseberry gets hit by soulfly nearly every year. Is there any non-chemical methods of dealing with gooseberry soulfly?
Yeah, what you could do is you can get these grease strips that stops the larvae climbing up. But the best thing is to just pick them off, really. You can give them a high jet of water to knock them off, but that can damage your plants. Another good way is to cultivate the soil underneath your gooseberry bush, which then brings the bugs to the surface and the birds will take them away. But again, we mentioned last week, when you do this, you're also bringing some dormant weed seeds to the surface at the same time. But I think the best thing is, Chris mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, going out there and just picking the larvae off, really. They're just like a little caterpillar looking.
Yeah, thing. I think the thing, Patricia, is to be really vigilant early in the season, because this happens to me quite a lot as well. And before you know it, when you notice you're nearly too late. So it's a good idea just to keep a wee eye on it. And I would also say, when you're picking off the wee tiny green caterpillars, look at some of the leaves, because you'll see all the wee eggs for the next batch of caterpillars, and if you can rub those off with your thumb, that's going to stop the next generation as well. Let me see, a question from Rosemary. Again, the green tub you insert the stem into, what's the name of it? Well, it's a hormone rooting powder. Yeah. Now we've got another question from Louise to say, we're only starting out on our home growing journey. Our strawberry bed is full of Secateurs. How do I stop this, please? Sorry, Slaters. So that's wood lice, isn't it? Seems to be a lot of wood lice this year, I think. Would you worry about wood lice?
They don't tend to do any damage to your strawberries, but you know, maybe the birds will just take them. It's old rotting wood that they tend to go for. They wouldn't really do much harm to your strawberries, really. and I think the frost they'll be burying themselves down into the ground anyway. But I wouldn't worry too much about wood lice with your strawberries.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, same here. I wouldn't either. I mean, slugs always seem to be more of a problem, don't they, than the wee wood lice. So Tricia is asking, can you take cuttings from old wood?
You're better with the new wood, because that's what it's going to. It fruits on the new wood, and that's what's going to throw out the roots better. The old wood doesn't tend to root very well, really. I've never had any success from old wood, if I'm honest. Just the new wood.
Sure. Okay. I suppose there's more life in the new wood too, isn't there? It's like that's wanting to grow for you. That kind of takes me on to the next question which is those cuttings that you've taken this week. When would you expect to get fruit from those? Now I know they're all a wee bit different. In term, the raspberries, for instance, you might get some fruit next year, might you, from those canes? Because
that would be this year's wood. So it'll be they'll fruit on next year's wood. So it'll be the new wood that they then fruit on. So it'll be the second year I'd be expecting to get anything from them.
Okay, and is that the same with the currants and the gooseberries?
Yeah.
Okay. Sinead has a question. She's asking, do you think fruit shrubs do well in pots?
Yes, yeah. And you can move them around as well. I have known people move them around to get, if they're not doing so well in one part of the garden, if they're in a pot, you can move them to a sunnier part of the garden. And especially now that the winter's coming, you could then move them into your greenhouse or your polytunnel or somewhere a bit warmer. I don't know if you noticed that them strawberries was next to that wall. That's because the wall gets the sun all day long, and then at night time it releases a bit of the heat. That's why that was strategically put there. But if you could move a pot around, so you can move it to some place where it's going to get a bit more heat.
Sure. And you'd probably use quite a big pot, Karen, as in it would need to be kind of diameter sort of 40 centimeter, probably like those big pots in the food for thought.
Great for strawberries, because it stops the strawberries then encroaching onto other parts of your garden as well.
Sure.
It keeps them contained, and yet they're well fed in them tubs as well. So they were a great size.
They were a great size and really sturdy. Like you could have them forever, really, couldn't you?
Oh, they'll last for a lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah. I think too that the other thing to answer to Sinead's question is blueberries are kind of one of the few fruits that really like acidic conditions. So growing them in a pot is a good thing, because you could buy a bag of what's called ericaceous compost or acid living compost, and use that in your pot. We grow blueberries here at home, and every year I would shred my Christmas tree up and use that as a mulch around the blueberries, and that seems to keep them happy too in terms of acids. So good for that as well. Now we have what have we got? Rosemary has another question again. With a gooseberry bush, you can take a long stem and push a little bit of it into the soil, and then I got a new bush from it. So there you go, same thing. Rosemary, Elaine is asking, how would I get a cutting from lavender?
Well, I've never really took cuttings from lavender much, but again, you wouldn't want as long a piece, that I was taking about 12 inches, but from lavender, it is a woody plant, and, just taking a smaller, say 25 to 30 centimeters, because you're looking at the side shoots from them to
Or not even, Kieran. Actually, I was out in the garden today, and you and I were discussing it earlier. I brought in some rosemary. So rosemary and lavender are kind of quite similar, aren't they? So I've just taken a bit of new growth from, and you can see it's new and it's fresh. Actually, rosemary really comes into its own at this time of year, I think. You can see it's because it's nice and bendy. So what I would do is, like Kieran would do with his fruit cuttings, is just take off the bottom leaves like that, and take the again, just like Kieran did, take a wee bottom of it there and use that for your cutting. And you could do exactly the same with lavender, I think. Plus, we were talking earlier about bay. So this is actually one of the suckers from the bottom of, maybe grow a bay in pot and slice lollipop tree, but from the bottom you get all this new growth. So this is one of those. So again, I would just take those leaves off, take it up to a wee bit there, and I would use that for cutting. I might, if that was you, Kieran, would you cut off some of the leaves as well?
You could, but not so much this time of year. I wouldn't bother. That'd be fine. I wouldn't cut much more than that, because they're not going to really lose that much moisture this time of year. But yeah, if you was doing that in the summer, I would definitely half the leaves.
Yeah, that's a great tip, actually. And again, I like mint. You're talking about propagating stuff. So this is, I just yanked this out of the ground. Mint's kind of coming to the end now, but mint's kind of the thing you can hardly kill, isn't it? So this just came up with a bit of root attached. So all you'd have to do is kind of pop that, back into the ground and trim it down, I suppose.
Yeah, I do exactly the same with the comfrey. If you can get a piece up with a bit of root onto it and just replant that, then you've got a comfrey plant.
Yeah, which is fantastic, because actually it's quite hard to buy comfrey, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've never started. You don't see it. People don't tend to buy it. But it's one of those great plants for the garden. I suppose it's a bit invasive as well. It's a bit like the mint. It'll take over. So
Yeah,
find a part of the garden that you don't really want it much.
that's right. Evie has another question about rhubarb. When is it best to plant rhubarb crowns, and where can I buy them? She's saying the local garden centre doesn't have any, and I'm keen to have some rhubarb next year. Also, what size of a pot is needed?
She'll probably get them in the garden centre around springtime. That'd be when I would plant the crown. If you planted it now, it's susceptible to frost. You'd have to maybe cover the crown a bit with some straw. So springtime would be the best time to plant it, and that's probably why the garden centres don't have it at the moment, because people wouldn't be buying it. So maybe try in the spring.
Absolutely, or if you can, if you've got a friend who has a rhubarb crown, you can maybe just chop a bit off that, or get the spade in and take a bit off theirs, because that's the thing about rhubarb crowns too. Over the time they do get really big, and you can sort of chop bits off. So that's more stuff for free, but obviously you'd need to ask, wouldn't you, before you did that? Okay, I think we've nearly out of questions now, but we've had so many, and that's been brilliant. One thing I did want to ask, Kieran, because you were using your secateurs a lot, and I've got my secateurs too. That with gardening, I don't think you need that much kit, but a pair of secateurs is a really good thing, isn't it?
Yes, and you can get very good quality, cheaper secateurs. You can spend a fortune on the expensive ones, but we don't. When in the training centre where I work, we have very good quality, but we've not spent more than £10 on them.
I was going to say about a tenner is,
Yeah.
you get a really good pair of secateurs for a tenner, wouldn't you?
Yes, and as long as you keep them sharp, every now and again use the oil stone on them, or you can get nice little sharpening kits for them. But it is important to keep them clean. I like to use WD-40 on them. It keeps the sap off, it does clean them. But again, you don't want that transpiring. You don't want to be transferring diseases from one plant to another. So that's why I always sort of carry, if I'm going pruning, a muslin cloth in a plastic bag and just give it a wipe now and again, because you don't want to kill all your bushes when you're pruning.
Sure, and so you use the surgical spirit for that, and I would use tea tree oil as well.
Yeah.
And because usually I have that in the house, but yeah, a wee pair of secateurs for like a tenner, or if you're lucky you can get it for less than that, like somewhere like Lidl or something, that who sometimes have them. So that's I think that's the end of the questions. That was a great session tonight. We've got some nice people on the chat saying thank you very much. That was really informative and I've learned a lot. So I would like to say to Kieran, thank you very much.
Thank you again.
You're a star and a fountain of knowledge. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. So our next webinar is going to be on the 25th of November.